Imagine this. You are standing in a full suit of iron armor. It weighs about 30 kilograms. The sun is beating down so fiercely that the air itself seems to melt. And even through your visor, you can see the haze shimmering above the stones. There's almost no air. It has baked, becoming heavy and viscous, like jelly. You cannot scratch an itch, not with your hand, not your back against a tree. The armor is deaf and smooth, and the quilted gambeson underneath soaks up sweat, but gives you no relief. You cannot sit properly. Your thighs press against steel plates, and the tail of the armor, the culet, digs into your tailbone. And you are expected to fight for hours. How is that even possible? And here is the main question we rarely ask. Why didn't knights die from overheating, suffocation, and exhaustion right inside their armor? Today, you will learn not just the answers. You will learn how they breathed, how they moved, where they found the strength to endure the hell inside their shell, and why the armor that was supposed to save them sometimes became their coffin. Because the truth about knights is not a song of heroes. It is the story of a human being trying to defeat physics, biology, and his own body by locking himself in iron. Many of us grew up on movies and games where a knight is a clumsy tank with legs like columns. An iron mountain that barely drags its feet, breathes heavily inside a helmet, and if it falls, you need a crane or 3 squires to get it back up. But that's a myth, and a rather insulting one to medieval engineers. A real knight in good armor was far more agile than you think. A suit of armor from the late 14th or 15th century didn't weigh all that much, just 25 to 35 kilograms distributed across the entire body. For comparison, a modern soldier in full combat gear, body armor, assault rifle, ammunition, helmet, radio, often carries 40 to 50 kilograms, and yet they still manage to run. A knight could run, jump, mount a horse without help, and even perform a backwards roll. This has been tested by reenactors wearing historical armor. He could jump off a horse without breaking a leg and spring back into the saddle without needing to brace a lance. Training manuals preserved in archives recommended that knights practice climbing ladders and doing somersaults daily. Armor was not just dead weight hanging from the shoulders, it was a well-engineered system for weight distribution. Most of the mass, pauldrons, breastplate, cuisses, rests not on the spine, but on the pelvic girdle and a wide belt, much like a hiking backpack. The weight spreads across the body, like water flowing into vessels. The arms carry elbow guards, the legs carry ankle guards, and the torso works in tandem with the lower back. Each component supports the next. But even in the finest armor forged by Milanese or Innsbruck masters, there remained a problem that no mechanics, no steel, and no forging could solve. The name of this problem is temperature. The true enemy of a knight is not the enemy's sword, not even the lance, not even the crossbow bolt that can pierce a cuirass from 100 meters away. It's overheating. Now let's break down exactly what a knight wore. First, against bare skin, a linen shirt to absorb sweat. Then a padded undergarment, accaton or gambeson, a thick layer of cotton or linen stitched in vertical rows to cushion blows. Over that, chainmail, even if plate armor is worn, because flexible protection is needed at the joints. And on top of that, metal plates, breastplate, backplate, pauldrons, elbow guards, vambraces, greaves, sabatons, armored shoes, and a helmet. All together, that's 3 to 4 layers of insulation. Under the sun, the metal heats up to plus 60 degrees Celsius and beyond. Inside the armor, the temperature rises to critical levels, plus 40, sometimes plus 50 degrees, with humidity near 100%, because sweat cannot evaporate. You boil in your own juices. especially in hot conditions, for instance during the Crusades to the Holy Land, 1096 to 1291. The chronicler Jean de Joinville, a participant in the Seventh Crusade, wrote, "Knights fell from their horses not from wounds, but from the heat. When their helmets were removed, water streamed down their faces as though they had just been pulled from a river." Knights literally cooked alive. The heart pounds like mad, pulse over 160. Sweat floods the eyes, but you can't wipe it away. Your hands are encased in steel gauntlets, and if you try to stick your fingers under the visor, you could lose a finger in combat. The armor doesn't absorb moisture, it traps it. The channels inside the padded garment, meant to wick away liquid, clog with salt from sweat within the first half hour. And by the end of the first hour of battle, instead of a brave warrior, you have a half-dead, dehydrated creature inside a red-hot metal can. Eyes bloodshot, tongue stuck to the roof of the mouth, ears ringing, muscles trembling from overload. Some chroniclers described knights losing consciousness while still standing, and they kept being struck. They didn't fall only because the armor held them upright like a mechanical exoskeleton.
So how did they actually survive such inhuman conditions? There are several reasons, and each is the result of centuries of military evolution. First, training from childhood. A knight wasn't made in a year, or even 5. Boys began their preparation at age 7. First, light leather armor or padded gambesons. Then metal pieces were added, greaves, vambraces. At 14, he became a squire and wore half-plate armor. Full steel was only donned at 21. The body adapted gradually, much like modern athletes who build endurance over years. Bones and joints adjusted to the pressure, and muscles learned to work isometrically. The second reason, the actual duration of combat. Movies love to show two armies hacking at each other for hours, taking turns in a bloody whirlwind. In reality, most knightly engagements, clashes of cavalry units, tournament duels, skirmishes over a bridge, lasted minutes, from 5 to 15. The decisive moment came quickly. Someone fell from their horse, someone's lance broke, the formation collapsed, and the fight ended. Yes, there were long sieges, Acre, Malta, Constantinople, and multi-day battles, Crécy, Poitiers. But where full armor was required, few knights could endure more than 2 or 3 hours straight. Most fights were broken. Attack, retreat, regroup. Third, breaks. Knights didn't stand in steel for days on end, contrary to legends of night watches. Between engagements, they removed their helmets, first thing, loosened their harness on straps, and opened their visors wide. Sometimes they even unbuckled individual pieces, like pauldrons or tassets, to cool their armpits and groin, the areas most vulnerable to overheating. Squires ran around with water jugs, wet rags, and placed them on the knight's face, wrists, and under the neck plate. Fourth, strict fluid discipline. Knights didn't drink whenever they wanted, but on a schedule. Small sips, often with vinegar or lemon juice, to reduce salt loss. And fifth, most importantly, the squire's assistance. Without them, you were nowhere. A lone knight in the field was a dead knight. A squire helped put on the armor, almost impossible to do alone. First buckle the straps at the back, then pull on the sabatons. Air it out after battle. Dry the arming doublet, hand over water, wipe the face, pull him out of the mud if he fell. Only as part of a team, 2 or 3 squires, a page, sometimes a groom, could he even survive. Without them, a knight turned into a tin can with a human inside in just a couple of hours.
And now, about the air. Because heat is only half the problem. The second problem is breathing.
I am well.
A closed helmet with a narrow eye slit, visor, and tiny breathing holes is like a gas mask with a sealed valve. Air only comes in through ventilation gaps covering a few square centimeters. When you're calm, you can breathe, but it's hard. But when you're running, swinging a sword, and the sword weighs 1.5 to 2 kilograms, and you have to lift it hundreds of times, when your heart is pounding like crazy, when adrenaline is surging, oxygen becomes catastrophically scarce. Carbon dioxide builds up inside the helmet faster than you can exhale it. Studies by modern reenactors with sensors have shown, after 10 minutes of intense combat in a closed helmet, CO2 levels reach 2 to 3%. Normal is 0.04%, causing dizziness, anxiety, and confusion. After 20 minutes, 5%. Panic, shortness of breath, loss of coordination. In battle, breathing falters, panic sets in. Even if subconscious, the body demands oxygen. Historical chronicles preserve accounts. Knights would sometimes deliberately raise their visor, or even remove their helmet, with one hand to take a few deep gulps of real air. The chronicler Matthew Paris, in the 13th century, describes how Richard, Earl of Cornwall, lost his helmet in combat and fought for half an hour without it, only using his shield for cover. But that was a mortal risk. An arrow, a javelin, or an opponent's lance strike could hit him right in the face. There are known cases of knights being killed precisely through an open visor. Yet they did it. Because suffocating inside your own helmet is not a heroic death. It is asphyxia 3 centimeters away from fresh air, when you can hear the wind but cannot breathe it. Imagine you are locked in a glass jar, and someone is slowly sucking the oxygen
out. Hold the line! Fight on!
You can see the sky, but you can't reach it. That is exactly how a knight felt after half an hour of fighting. But there is an enemy more terrifying than heat and lack of oxygen. Its name is mud. Because if summer means you boil, then autumn or spring means you drown. Now imagine a different scene. A field after rain. Classic Northern Europe, the Battle of Agincourt, 1415. Clay mixed with human bodies, horse sweat, blood, and shards of armor. All of it turns into a knee-deep, liquid, slippery, sticky slush. You are carrying 30 kilograms of iron. The armor sucks mud into its joints. The kneecaps clog. The elbows refuse to bend. Sabatons have blunt toes and slippery soles, no tread whatsoever. You trip over a body and fall. And you realize that getting up is nearly impossible. Your legs slide apart, your arms sink into the sticky mire, and the armor traps filth like a trap. Every joint works as a pump, sucking in water and earth. It was wet, soggy mud that killed more knights than enemy swords. At Agincourt, the English archers deliberately waited until the horses had churned up the field to create a muddy trap. The fully armored French knights fell to the ground and could not rise. They were simply stabbed with daggers through the joints of their armor or through their visors. A 16th century chronicler wrote, "100 dismounted knights in the mud are worth less than a dozen archers on dry ground." If you fall, you are a target. While you flail, slip, and try to get on all fours, which in armor is like a turtle trying to flip over, some foot soldier will simply stick a dagger into your eye slit. Or worse, you will be trampled by your own knights, who are also falling behind you. So yes, mud was not just an inconvenience. It was a weapon of mass destruction. Historians have calculated that at Agincourt, About a third of the French knights died not from blows, but from suffocation in the mud. They drowned face down, unable even to turn their heads. Even the fittest athlete has a limit. Overheating, dehydration, muscle fatigue, hypoxia, it all accumulates and multiplies. After a certain time, different for everyone depending on fitness and heat, the body simply starts to shut down. First, your hands tremble. A fine tremor from exhaustion. You cannot aim your sword precisely. Then, your legs go numb. The calf and thigh no longer feel the touch of skin against metal. Your steps become unsteady. Your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. You no longer control it. Your vision doubles. Instead of one enemy, you see two, and you don't know which one to strike. And at that moment, the armor turns from a savior into shackles. You cannot lie down on the grass and rest because you will be killed. You cannot run away quickly because the armor is heavy and your legs no longer obey. And you cannot even call for help. Inside a helmet, with a sweat-soaked arming cap and the roar of blood in your ears, no one will hear you, even if you scream. A knight at the peak of exhaustion is an animal in a cage. The cage protects him, yet it is also the cage from which he slowly dies, aware of his own helplessness. Modern biomechanical research has shown that after 2 hours in full plate without removing the helmet, striking force decreases by 60%, reaction time halves, and concentration approaches the level of severe alcohol intoxication. The knight still looks fearsome, but he is already a decoration, a scarecrow.
Now imagine the most terrifying scenarios that medieval chroniclers described in whispers. A knight falls into water, even a shallow stream, waist deep. 30 kilograms of metal drag him to the bottom instantly. The gambeson soaks through, absorbs water like a sponge, becomes heavier than lead, adding another 20 to 30 kilograms. The helmet fills with water through the visor, and you take a convulsive breath, but instead of air, sludge. It's impossible to surface because the falde and pauldrons catch the current like sails, yet pull downward. Yes, such cases were recorded. For example, during the siege of Galich in 1238, several Rus warriors in heavy armor drowned in the river while trying to cross a ford. A knight drowns 2 meters from the shore, and his comrades simply cannot pull him out. He is too heavy, and the slippery armor offers nothing to grip. Or falling into mud. We have already spoken of bog graves. Or, most terrifying of all, falling into a crowd. When your horse is killed by spears and you fly downward, and on top of you fall other fighters, living, wounded, dead. You find yourself at the very bottom of a living meat grinder, under several hundred kilograms of pressure. You cannot move an arm, a leg, not even your neck. There is no space. You hear above you the groaning, the screaming, the crunching of bones, the splintering of spears. You are simply finished off. Or, even more horrifying, you are left to await the end of the battle, and then they strip the armor from your half-living body. Because armor does not make you invulnerable, it only buys you time. And sometimes, that time is far too short. Armor protected, yet at the same time it took away freedom. This is the paradox of the Middle Ages. That which was meant to save you could kill you. No armor saved anyone from suffocation, gave no air, wicked away no heat, pulled no one from the mud. It only offered a chance and demanded sacrifice. And yet, why did they continue to put on this steel prison? Knowing about the heat, the suffocation, the mud, and the fear of drowning, about ribs broken by one's own cuirass during a fall, about toenails sloughing off after 3 hours in armor from constant pressure and dampness. The answer is simple
and brutal. The alternative was worse. Without armor, one random blow and you are dead. Paralyzed, bleeding out, dying over 3 days of infection, dirt in the wound to sepsis to agony. With armor, you have a chance. You can miss a block, endure the hit, and answer back. You can survive an arrow lodged in a pauldron rather than your lung. You might not lose an arm to a saber strike. The knight chose the risk not because he was foolish or fearless, but because it was the only real way to stay alive in a world where swords, spears, arrows, crossbow bolts, maces, warhammers, axes, and daggers flew from every side, and the infantry dreamed of bringing you down and finishing you off. Armor did not make him immortal, but it turned death from a certainty into a probability. And that is already a great deal. It gave hope. It gave you the right to make a mistake. 1, 2, perhaps 3 mistakes per battle. And that was worth more than any gold. So how could they spend hours in armor? The truthful answer does not sound heroic. It sounds like this. They could not do it for long. They endured. They forced themselves. They grew accustomed to it from childhood. They seized every minute of respite. They took risks, opened visors, unbuckled straps, drank through a straw inserted into a slit. They deceived their bodies, shutting down their consciousness and switching to pure will. They prayed, and sometimes, yes, sometimes they died right inside their shell, where the air grows too heavy and the iron too tight, where the last sound you hear is your own wheezing, reflected back into your ears by the steel. And still, when the castle gates opened and the knights rode onto the field, they were in their armor. Because even a hell you can control is better than a paradise that will kill you in a second. Armor did not make the knight invulnerable. It made him a survivor, on the edge. On the edge of human strength, on the edge of physics, on the edge of life and death, where every breath is a victory and every step a defiance.